Hey guys, this is MetalBlade5, and I'm going to do a response video to TheCrimsonTaco's review of Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. Now, as you'd probably guess, considering that I'm responding to a review of a Zelda game, I'm a huge Legend of Zelda fan, and Twilight Princess is my second favorite game in the entire series. My favorite being Ocarina of Time. Anyway, when Twilight Princess came out, it got a lot of hate, and there are some people who still say it's a bad game now. And I was always wondering, why did Twilight Princess get so much hate? So I typed in on YouTube why Twilight Princess is bad, or something like that, just to find out why a lot of people said it was bad. And TheCrimsonTaco's review, which is titled Why Twilight Princess Sucks, is and I looked at the like-dislike ratio, and it was 37 likes, 517 dislikes, or something like that. It's oh my god. So then I watched the video, and it was it did not answer my question at all. It was just so bad. And it's not because he didn't like the game. I'm fine with him not liking it. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. It's just that the review was so badly made. And the main reason is that he, what do you do, what's the main thing about a game that you focus on in a review? The gameplay and the plot, like every good reviewer like Some Call Me Johnny does. Yet, TheCrimsonTaco does not think the same way, and decides to mainly focus on the bosses, which are a tiny fraction of the whole game. Oh no, this already looks terrible when I first saw it. So anyway, I'm going to do this video in two parts. The first part, this part will be about what his complaints about the bosses. Second part will be about his other complaints that he mentioned in his review, if you could even classify it as a. So anyway, on to the first boss of the game, Diababa, or Diababa, however it's pronounced. I don't even think I need to really explain about why his complaints about this boss are stupid, because he complains about this boss being easy when it's the first boss of the game. And almost every video game in all of existence, the first boss is easy. We're not in the 1980s anymore. Because the regular standard for video games is that the first boss is easy. And you say that oh, this boss being easy foreshadows the rest of the game being easy. But if that is the case, then that would be qualified, for almost every other video game in existence. And especially Zelda games as well. Because if I played Ocarina of Time and just was basing my entire opinion on the game on Gohma, then I would probably think it's a bad game, because Gohma can be taken down in 10 seconds. Jesus Christ, complaining about the first boss, that is just stupid. I don't even need to say anything else. Oh, and by the way, you say he only has one attack? He has two. Anyway, moving on to the next boss of the game, Fyrus. No, one of your main complaints about Fyrus, other than his name being stupid, things like that, is that you say he has this gentle trip and he gets knocked out. It's a video game. They don't follow real world physics. And besides, he's Fyrus is big and heavy, so he would probably get hurt quite a bit from falling over. No matter how slow it probably would be. And like, you also like say like, why can't the Gorons defeat him? It's like, well, obviously, other than the obvious answer, then we wouldn't have a boss. But then also would be like, the two things that you need to use against Fyrus are the iron boots and the bow. And the Gorons can't use either of those because one, they don't have the iron boots, and they can't fit into them, and they break the bow just by using it because they're way too strong. So that is the reason why Link has to be the one to save the day. And you also say like, oh, why is this boss easy when it's big? It was like, the beginning of Shadow of the Colossus is easy, and you know, the Colossi are big in that game. So that would mean the beginning of Shadow of the Colossus would be a bad game. Would make it, the beginning of Shadow of the Colossus would be bad because they'd be easy and big. Anyway, the main like complaints that like Crimson Taco has in this review is that he says like, oh, this is supposed to be a dark and adult Zelda game. Why is it so easy? It's like, when has there been a rule that dark and adult games have to be hard? Seriously, I've seen dark games that are easy, and I've seen games that are targeted to adults that are easy, and that doesn't make them bad. Like, easy doesn't mean make a game bad. It's like, if that was the case, then like every Kirby game would be bad, but they're not. They're really fun. I mean, I do agree that Fyrus is pathetically easy and the easiest boss in the game, but your complaints don't make any sense. So anyway, moving on to Twilt, in quotes, Morpheel. Okay, you Crimson Taco, you clearly need glasses here, because it says Twilight, you know, because the monsters are made from Twilight Realm magic. It says Twilight, not Twilt. Ugh. Anyway, on to the fight itself. Morpheel's first form can be tricky, and because if you don't know what you're doing, but its second form, like you say, is obviously doesn't do anything, which I agree is stupid. But again, like, Morpheel is the third boss in the game, and like with third bosses in games, obviously they have to be harder than the first two, but still generally easy. And Morpheel definitely easy, but it's still definitely harder than Diababa and Fyrus. And then I say that like the accomplishment in video games only come from like bosses being a challenge. Like I can kind of understand where you're coming from with that, but it's not just bosses being a challenge that can bring accomplishment. It's also knowing that you're getting to see the rest of the game. You get to get closer to your objective in the game. That also brings accomplishments. Anyway, moving on to one of the best bosses in the game, at least in my opinion, Stallord. Stallord is one of the best bosses in the game because he is it is an incredibly unique fight. It is fast-paced, and it makes great use of the spinner, being the item that you get in the dungeon. And yet, you, Crimson Taco, describe it as a Mario Party minigame. What the fuck? How in any way is Stallord Light a Mario Party minigame? Anyway, the first form of Stallord isn't too hard. It is annoying to hit him when he starts, like, you know, creating zombies from the ground. But then you move on to the second form, which is where, like, most of TheCrimsonTaco's complaints about this fight come from. He says that, like, the second form isn't surprising because, like, every boss in this game, except for Fyrus, has a second form. And I can understand what you mean. It's just that, like, second forms don't just bring surprise as in it being that there is a second form. It also brings surprise as in sort of the, like, you build up suspense, like wondering, like, what is the second form? What's it going to do in its second form? And like with Stallord, it's only its head, so you're wondering how's he going to fight with just his head by himself. So obviously it comes into a surprise when you see what he does from that suspense that builds up, if you know what I mean. And like, you then also say that the second form is like always like easier than the first form. It's like, okay, first of all, how was Diababa's first form harder than the second form? Anyway, second is that Stallord's second form is also really good because, again, it's fast-paced, very interesting, and again, it makes great use of the spinner. And while his attacks are easy to see coming, you have like less reaction time the closer you get to him, so you have to adapt to that shortened reaction time. So anyway, next boss, Blizzeta, which surprisingly you don't complain about. I was really expecting you to complain a lot about Blizzeta, because she's definitely one of the easiest bosses in the whole game. The only thing I really need to say about Blizzeta here is just that Blizzeta's second form is definitely harder than the first form, which ruins your whole argument saying that every second form is easier than the first form. So anyway, next boss of the game, Armogohma. Your first complaint about Armogohma is that the weak point is obvious, and well, yes, that is true, but like, let's see, while the obvious weak point is one of the dumbest video game cliches in all of history, that doesn't make an entire boss battle bad, though, just because of that. Because, like, there are plenty of Zelda games, and plenty of Nintendo games, really, in general, where the boss has an obvious weak point that you can see. Like, again, especially in Zelda games, because usually in Zelda games, when you see an eye, you just shoot it with an arrow. And that's the case of every Gohma in the series. And then, like, speaking of Gohma, I'm really surprised that you say that Armogohma is easier than Gohma in Ocarina of Time, because, as I said earlier, you can take out Gohma in 10 seconds. And, like, I don't recall any attacks that Gohma really has other than falling on top of you, when Armogohma can shoot lasers from its eye and send its babies after you. And speaking of the laser, you say that like the laser doesn't hit you. That is completely bullshit, because the laser does go after you. It's like, see, if you watch like Nintendo Capri Suns, Josh Jepson's, and Steven Plays' LPs of Twilight Princess, they get hit by the laser, and it's not because of them like running into it, it's just because the laser does go after them. It's like near the end of the laser attack, the laser circles around Link, like that near the end of the attack. And obviously that's what you showed in the video to try and make your argument look valid when it isn't. And obviously my main thing that like bugs me about your complaints against Armogohma is that you complain about like the second form. The second form of Armogohma is basically just the eye trying to run away from you. This second form was obviously done as a joke. It is a joke. There's nothing wrong with having fun when making a game. It was put in as a joke. I mean, how could you not tell that? Even the music that plays during that part shows that this is an obvious joke. The reaction on Link's face when he sees it makes it clear that this is a joke, yet that goes completely over your heads. Oh my god. And like, you're claiming that like this game is like easy because people said Wind Waker was hard. And it's like, I have not seen one person on the internet who said Wind Waker was hard. I have never seen anybody say Wind Waker was hard. Okay, I'm not saying you're lying, but obviously if there are people who say Wind Waker was hard, then there must be a very small number of them. So that's so small that Nintendo probably didn't even know about them. Okay. Next boss, and one of my personal favorite bosses in the game, Argorok. Now, Argorok is obviously the boss of my favorite dungeon in the game, being the City in the Sky. And I think like the boss fight, while it is easy, it is really epic because you're in the sky in like this massive thunderstorm. You gotta claw shot onto his tail, pull him down with the iron boots, rip off his armor, which causes him to lose his armor, and then like you have to go really up high in the sky with these. Now they're being pea hats because the rain made them grew, and then you have to like claw shot around to get to Argorok's back, to then get on his back, and then stab him in the back to kill him, and I just find it really epic. Anyway, but as always with like almost every boss in this game, Crimson Taco finds really stupid excuses to say why this boss is bad. First excuse saying that he is slightly smaller than he is. When you first reach the City in the Sky, you see Argorok fly above you, and he does definitely look bigger than what he does in the actual fight, but it's not that much of a size difference, so I don't see why you should complain about boss being slightly smaller than it was before. And once again, you complain about real-world physics in a video game when you talk about how you pull him down. It's like, oh, he gently fell and his armor fell off. Well, first of all, obviously it's a video game, and second of all, that armor could be incredibly loose. I mean, that armor doesn't look much like it was designed for a dragon to wear. And then, oh my god, this is something I absolutely hate so much. My least favorite part of all of the boss complaints is that, see, you know that part that I was just mentioning before where you have to claw shot the pea hats to get to Argorok's back? But when you're doing that, Argorok breathes fire and breathing the fire, which is moving towards the direction that Link is. And basically, obviously, you get away from the fire by claw shotting that. Well, that's what Crimson Taco was doing, but he was complaining about the boss not hitting him. You're avoiding his attack, and you complain about him not hitting you? That is your own damn fault! Of course, a boss is not going to hit you when you avoid his attack. That is the whole point of what avoid means. Oh my god, Jesus Christ. Anyway, next boss of the game, Zant. Obviously, I'm very happy that you don't have any complaints about Zant, because if you did, then I would have a really long rant, which would have made this video even longer than it should be. Alright, next boss, Zelda, surprisingly, because Ganondorf controls her. It's like, my massive problem here is that, like, you don't care about the fact that Zelda is being controlled by Ganondorf, that you have to fight the person that you're supposed to be saving the whole game. Like, that is just makes you sound like a heartless bastard right there. And it's like, oh, none of the characters are interesting, so it's not interesting when I have to fight the person I've been saving. Like, seriously, having to fight the person that you're supposed to be saving the entire game makes like a massive impact on the player, because they don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to die from the battle? Is something horrible going to happen? Something is like the villain going to do something with them when you win? It's like, this is things that go through your mind. Like, imagine like a Mario game if Peach is like being brainwashed by the villain and you have to fight her. Oh wait, they did do that in Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, and it made a massive impact on the player. Anyway, next boss, Ganon, which obviously you don't complain about other than the fact that you don't think it's final boss material, which is fine, that is your opinion. So, moving on to the next boss, Ganondorf on his horse. That's something I always wondered, what is the horse actually called? But anyway, the first thing, you complain about Ganondorf not being dead. It's like, okay, you complain about the final boss not being dead. He's the final boss, so of course he's going to put up a fight. He is the king of evil. He has the Triforce of power. You know, 1/3 of the ultimate power, and the power part of it. I would definitely expect him to put up a fight. And then, like, next complaint is that, like, oh, the townsfolk don't do anything. Well, for one, you can't see the townsfolk, so you don't know what they're doing. Second, the castle town is, like, all the way the other side of the field. So the townsfolk probably don't even know that Link is fighting Ganondorf in Hyrule Field. They're probably distracted by the fact that Ganondorf destroyed Hyrule Castle. They're probably more distracted by that they can't notice Link fighting in the field. And even if they did notice, by the time they got there, Link probably would have already killed Ganondorf by then. So there's no point to get the townsfolk involved. I don't really know why that is a complaint about a boss battle. Anyway, obviously, to the final boss, or as you claim, the final boss. The final boss of bosses that lead towards the final boss. Anyway, you first complain about like how you fight Ganondorf in Hyrule Field, and then you do what I like to call the biased quiz of epicness. Okay, so for those of you who haven't seen the video, good for you, because obviously this video makes you lose some of your brain cells. He does like this joke where he does like a quiz and like, which of these sounds more epic? Running down a crumbling castle while having to face a giant monster? Sword fighting fighting under the ocean in the ruins of Hyrule Castle or of fields. That is so biased because you use like adjectives and part of the situation for them. That obviously makes them sound more epic. If I said like, this is what would have made it an actual fair quiz. Which of these sounds more epic? Running down a crumbling castle while eventually facing a giant monster. Sword fighting at the bottom of the ocean in the ruins of Hyrule Castle. Or fighting in a dark, stormy field. Fighting the King of Evil after all the shit that he's put you through, and destroying the castle and killing your companion. I mean, that definitely makes it sound epic, don't you think? And you also complain about like your whole like beast, like Ganondorf starts off as a beast and then goes to human. They shouldn't do that. It's like if you had to fight the Hulk and then Bruce Banner. Second of all, fighting the Hulk and then Bruce Banner is different because Bruce Banner can't do shit. Ganondorf can do shit when he is in his human form. Second of all, he did the whole beast to human thing in Wind Waker. You know, the game that you constantly say you love and stuff in the review. Yeah, he goes from puppet Ganon, obviously, his beast form, to Ganondorf, his human form. So why is the complaint in Twilight Princess when you obviously probably didn't have any problems with it in Wind Waker? Makes you sound kinda, you know, biased a bit there, buddy. Anyway, I should also bring up like how like Ganondorf fights. The fight is easy, obviously. But the fight is definitely epic though, like with the whole atmosphere, the whole knowledge of what Ganondorf has done. And Ganondorf does fight in like a very like smart way, despite him being easy. And so like, your main complaint is that this game is easy, but as I said before, easy games aren't bad, and it's like, Zelda game, most Zelda games are easy. Like, name me one Zelda game, not counting the first two. Name me one Zelda game, not counting the first two, that is hard. I can't think of any, and the 3D games are especially easy, like Wind Waker was easy, Ocarina of Time was easy, Majora's Mask was easy, Skyward Sword was easy, so, you know, and Twilight Princess as well. So, like, you should expect it to be easy, and again, obviously, from what I said before, this game was probably just made to be like another Zelda game. It was supposed to be realistic, to appeal to the people who didn't like Wind Waker because of the art style, and they just added a few dark elements, you know, to make it a little bit more like, you know, the story a little bit more unique than other Zelda games. And then, obviously, the ESRB just decided to make it like T rating 12 here, and obviously made everybody think that it was supposed to be designed for adults, when obviously that was probably not the case. Anyway, I'll see you in part 2.